Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we have a mission, and it's all about maximizing efficiency. How do we get the biggest possible training effect when we're, you know, forced to combine that high-demand strength and speed work into a single session? We are cutting through the noise to find the specific sequencing prescription you need.
It really is the ultimate training puzzle for any serious athlete or coach. And for this deep dive, we're zeroing in on a genuinely insightful piece of research that tackles this question head-on. The official title is Unveiling Optimal Order of Power-Based Resistance and Short Sprint Interval Training in Maximizing Lower Extremity Physical Fitness Attributes of Judo Athletes.
Wow, that title is a blueprint for action right there. The authors are Yongbing Chen, Chunlei, Minghao Peng, and Jixin Shan. And this was published in the esteemed Journal of Sports Science and Medicine, Volume 25, pages 138-148 from 2026.
Right. And the core question is simple, but profoundly important for periodization. When you combine short sprint interval training, or SSIT, which is that intense speed work, with power-based resistance training, or RT, does the sequence SSIT then RT or RT then SSIT actually matter for the athlete's performance gains?
And this is the rare study that offers clear prescriptive advice. It doesn't just say train hard. It tells you precisely how to sequence your workout to specifically prioritize explosive speed and power or maximal strength. Okay, let's unpack this. Maybe we start by looking at why judo athletes were the perfect subjects for this kind of investigation.
Yeah, we have to establish the physical demands first. Judo is defined as a high-intensity, intermittent combat sport. So this means the action is characterized by these repeated, violent bursts of activity, think 15 to 30 seconds. And they're followed by these short, crucial recovery periods of maybe 5 to 10 seconds.
And the competitive scenario just amps up the pressure, right? A successful competitor might have to fight 5 to 7 matches in a single day. You need physical conditioning that is somehow simultaneously sustainable and explosive.
Exactly. And when we look at the energy systems, the bulk of the metabolic demand, we're talking 50 to 81%, comes from the aerobic system. It's what keeps you moving for those minimum 4-minute matches, and certainly across 5 rounds.
The winning moment.
But the moments of success, the throwing techniques, they demand maximum energy output over milliseconds. That requires the immediate anaerobic ATP PCR system.
So you have an athlete who needs the endurance of a distance runner for consistency, and at the same time, the instantaneous power of a weightlifter for those decisive actions.
That metabolic complexity is exactly why coaches rely on combined training, integrating strength and conditioning into the same session to save time and address all systems at once. But this brings us to the historical challenge, the interference effect.
The classic problem, where lifting heavy and doing cardio in the same session can sometimes, negate your gains, especially in power.
Precisely. Previous research showed that traditional endurance training after resistance training often diminished muscular power gains. But this study cleverly sidestepped that problem by using 2 specific modalities known to be less prone to interference. They use power-based RT, which focuses on speed of movement rather than pure hypertrophy, and short sprint interval training, SSIT.
And that SSIT is critical here. Since the sprints are less than 10 seconds of all-out effort, the authors argue it's a far more advantageous method for intermittent sports like judo compared to, say, continuous aerobic training or even longer-form HIIT. They're really trying to find the optimal order while mitigating that classic interference problem.
Exactly.
So they set the stage for a very clever experiment. Walk us through the mechanics of the study itself. How do they actually test this sequencing theory?
Okay, so they recruited 24 young male judo athletes. And, importantly, all of them had extensive high-level training backgrounds. They were then randomized into 3 distinct groups for a 6-week intervention, training 3 times per week during their preparatory phase. So this wasn't a recreational population. These were serious athletes.
And the groups define the order of intervention, right? So group 1 was SSIT followed by RT, the SSIT plus RT group.
Yep.
Group 2 was RT followed by SSIT, so the RT plus SSIT group. And group 3 was the control group, which just continued their standard judo practice without this extra combined training.
And there's a vital operational detail here. A 10-minute rest period was mandatory between the 2 training modalities in both intervention groups. This break allows the heart rate and immediate fatigue levels to stabilize a bit, which ensures that the second exercise isn't performed in an entirely wiped out state.
Right. And what were the measures they used to decide which order was superior? It sounds like they tested basically everything that matters for lower body power.
Oh, they were comprehensive. They looked at raw speed and agility using the 20-meter linear sprint and the agility t-test, and explosive power via the counter-movement vertical jump, or CMVJ. For strength, it was lower body maximal strength measured via the 45-degree leg press.
And what about the specific demands of the sport itself?
That's where the specific judo fitness test, or SJFT, comes in. This test simulates the actual repeated match demands, looking at heart rate response and power decay across 3 15-second high-intensity periods. And crucially, they also measured maximum oxygen consumption, VO max, and anaerobic power using the Wingate test, which gives us both peak power, P peak, for that instantaneous burst, and mean power, P mean, which is sustained over 30 seconds.
So the first kind of macro level takeaway is pretty simple. Combining these two training types works exceptionally well. Both the SSIT plus RT and RT plus SSIT groups saw significant improvements across almost every single measure, while the control group, just doing standard judo practice, well, they stagnated.
Absolutely. The stimulus was definitely strong, but as you mentioned, the devil is in the sequence. And here's where it gets really interesting. The order effects. The results confirmed a definitive interaction over the 6 weeks based on the sequence they used.
Okay, let's focus on the gold standard for explosive athleticism, speed and agility. If an athlete prioritizes being faster and jumping higher, the attributes that define a decisive power move in judo, which order won out?
SSIT first was the overwhelming winner, just no contest. The SSIT plus RT sequence delivered significantly greater gains in explosive power and speed. If we look at the vertical jump, the CMVJ, the SSIT plus RT group, had an overall 12.1% improvement. And that translated to a large effect size. We're talking ES of 1.58.
That's a huge shift in performance, a really huge shift.
It is. Now, compare that to the RT plus SSIT group, which only achieved a moderate effect size, an ES of 0.85. To translate that statistic, the SSIT first group saw performance changes that were roughly double the magnitude of the RT first group's changes in jump height.
Wow, and that pattern was consistent, right? It wasn't just for jumping.
Completely consistent. For the 20-meter sprint, the SSIT plus RT group showed a large effect, while RT plus SSIT only showed a small effect. For the agility t-test, again, SSIT plus RT was significantly superior. And even in the Wingate peak power, that P peak, which measures the instantaneous 5-second burst power at SIT plus RT, demonstrated a large effect and superior adaptation compared to RT plus SSIT.
So we have a clear directive. If you want explosive capabilities, jumping, sprinting, immediate power, you have to put the sprints first. No, wait a minute. If SSAT first yields better power, does that automatically mean RT first has to yield better strength? Or is it possible that one sequence just, trashes everything?
It's a very targeted trade-off, which is exactly why this study is so valuable. The RT plus SSIT sequence did show superior adaptations in pure maximal strength, which they measured by the leg press. They saw a greater increase in strength compared to the SSIT plus RT group, although the effect sizes overall were a bit smaller for strength.
So it's a classic training dichotomy in practice. You can't maximize everything at once. You have to choose your priority based on the training phase.
That said, it's also important to note what the order didn't affect. Both regimens resulted in similar moderate gains for the specific judo fitness test, the SJFT, and for sustained anaerobic output, so mean power, P-mean, and V-show max.
So the overall cardiorespiratory fitness and that sustained match readiness, that's robust to sequencing. Those gains seem to come from just including SSIT, regardless of whether it's done first or second. It's the highly specific, single-burst explosive attributes, that fast-twitch fiber activation, that are truly sensitive to the order.
Right. And now that we know the outcome, let's dig into the why, the physiological mechanisms that actually explain this trade-off. Why does doing resistance training first undermine power gains later?
The researchers point directly to the physiological state that's induced by heavy lifting. Right? Performing RT first leads to muscle glycogen depletion and the immediate onset of fatigue, which means increased lactate and H+ ions are just swimming around in muscle tissue.
And this resulting acidic, glycogen-depleted environment, it acts like a throttle. It specifically restricts the optimal activation of the fast-twitch muscle fibers, which are the ones you absolutely rely on for the maximal effort, explosive work of SSIT. If those crucial fibers are chemically fatigued, you just get diminished power adaptations.
So you're essentially training your body to be explosive when it's already halfway done with the workout. You're not maximizing the quality of that explosive stimulus. So performing the SSIT when the neuromuscular system is fresh maximizes the rate of force development, which is the entire point of power training.
Now let's flip it to the strength side. Why does initiating training with SSIT first diminish maximal strength gains later? It's a different mechanism. The source suggests that starting with SSIT, which is high force, rapid repetition, it leads to metabolite accumulation that can specifically inhibit calcium release in the muscle fibers.
That's fascinating. So we're not talking about just general fatigue, but actual chemical interference that blocks the optimal signaling for the heavy lift later on.
Exactly. Calcium release is the absolute key to initiating and sustaining the muscle contraction you need for maximum strength efforts. If that chemical signal is, as you said, gummed up by the preceding sprint metabolites, you can't fully recruit the fibers or fire them optimally for the strength-based RT. Think of it like trying to run an engine on bad fuel. The parts are there, your muscle fibers are capable, but the chemical signal for maximum RPMs is diminished.
That clarifies the metabolic picture significantly. So prioritizing RT at the start facilitates the necessary neuromuscular and potential hypertrophic adaptations you need for maximal strength before those SSIT metabolites can interfere with the signaling process.
And we should also revisit that interesting nuance you mentioned on the Wingate test, the difference between P-peak for 5 seconds and P-Zian for 30 seconds. SSIT first is advised for enhancing that short duration P-peak, likely because it better preserves muscle phosphocreatine levels, the immediate energy source.
But the finding that P-arine, the sustained anaerobic output, was comparable between both orders. That suggests that for longer, sustained anaerobic output, the deep metabolic pathways being stressed are similar regardless of whether the sprints or lifts came first. The order effect is extremely specific to that initial burst of power.
And finally, let's talk about a detail that moves this research from simply being better to being more reliable,
Right.
the consistency of adaptation. The researchers went beyond the average results and they looked at inter-individual variability using the coefficient of variation, or CV, and individual residuals, or IRs.
And this is such a sophisticated detail that coaches really need to understand. It's one thing if the average performance is better, but what if half the team benefits and the other half plateaus? Consistency is absolutely crucial for team training.
They found that incorporating SSIT at the beginning, the SSIT plus RT group, not only produced greater average adaptations in explosive power and P-peak, but it also induced more consistency in those adaptations, and that was evidenced by lower IRs and CVs. There was just less variation between athletes.
So what does this all mean for the coach on the ground? If the goal is explosive power jumping, sprinting, peak anaerobic output, SSC first provides both a better average result and, critically, a more predictable result across the team. You're minimizing the risk of a high variability response.
And the opposite was true for strength. RT first produced more homogeneity, so lower IRs and CVs for strength performance. This means if maximal strength is your primary phase goal, doing RT first gives you the best average gains and the most reliable, predictable outcome across your roster.
That is truly actionable information. It moves us from, guessing about training sequence to making informed, physiologically justified decisions based on specific performance goals.
These findings demonstrate clearly that the order of power-based resistance training and short sprint interval training is not some minor programming detail. It's a critical variable for optimizing specific lower body fitness attributes in athletes, especially during the preparatory phase.
So for you, the listener, who may be involved in coaching, training, or just optimizing your own conditioning, the final prescriptive takeaway is definitive. Prioritize short sprint interval training first if your goal is explosive capabilities, your jumps, your sprints, and your peak power. But prioritize resistance training first if maximal strength gain is your primary objective.
And understanding the underlying physiological trade-offs, that inhibition of calcium release versus the depletion of phosphocreatine, it allows us to design training sessions that maximize the desired adaptation while scientifically minimizing the interference.
If these detailed findings on effect sizes, neuromuscular mechanisms, and the crucial consistency data are relevant for your work or just your curiosity, we really encourage you to dive into the full source article for all the methodology and detailed data tables. This specific study offers a blueprint for precision conditioning. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Make sure to follow the channel and turn on notifications to receive more of these tailored deep dives designed for insightful learning. We'll see you next time.